Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to another episode of The Nerd Archivist. We are continuing our journey through Dead Space. We are covering chapters 5 through 8. Shit hits the fan pretty fast, and it doesn't really stop through this chapter. It just kind of goes very fast. As my co-host has said to me earlier, there's a lot of action in this section.
Yeah, it's a very action-heavy sequence.
If you are just kind of tuning in, again, my name is Brandon.
And I'm Dakota.
And we are your hosts for this. So, real quickly, before we dive into this story, I want to say a few things. One, they are called pulse rifles and not assault rifles. I looked that up later.
Check.
Second, the pilot that died in the Kellyan was named Haley. I think Haley Johnson, but her name is Haley. R.I.P. Haley. We didn't really know you, but you seemed like a cool person. I'm sad.
Other than that, I haven't really been able to do too much research. I've been starting a new job, which has been exciting, and we're just busy people, so I haven't been able to research too much on some of the other loose ends that we left, but we'll take care of that in the next episode or the next.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
Chapter 5, Lethal Devotion, starts out. Nicole had previously said medical is a sanctuary to try and lead people there for safety. And it starts out with Issaic, our protagonist, saying, "I'm going back to medical."
Yes. So he gets the message. And also the message very much looks like it's been chopped very specifically. But he's like, "Nicole, I must go to where Nicole is." And Hammond's like, "Yeah, you should go check out and see if there are any survivors there. I'm going to head to crew deck." So they break off, but I do want to say too, because I started playing on my PC because I was having TV issues with my PlayStation 5, and so I had to start back over from my PC save, and so I played back through chapter 3 and just bum rushed it straight through. But Daniels calls Hammond out just the chapter before with the ADS cannons. Daniels calls Hammond out and is essentially like, there's no way CEC couldn't have known about the marker, couldn't have known what was here. And Hammond is just straight up like, "Look, man, I don't know anything about it. I don't know anything about it. This is over my pay grade. But we can talk about this later when we're alive."
Yeah, because they're well past the search and rescue part of the mission, and it is the get the fuck out part of the mission.
Yes. And so you go to medical, and one thing I think is really interesting, and this is a thing you'll see a lot more through this, is the progression. Like, you see the ships start to really change. So this one, not so much by, like, the infestation, this part anyways, but, like, you go to medical, and it's noticeably bloodier, and all this stuff in the hallway has been removed, and there are lanterns, these eerie fucking lanterns that are just, like, lighting your way. Also, there are just dead necromorphs at the door, too, like a welcoming present. Like, "Hey, here are these dead necromorphs for you. Do you like them? Follow the lanterns." So you get into medical, and then everything shuts down, and you hear an eerie voice tell you things.
Oh yeah. I also, for those of you playing along, once you go through the flight deck and you're on your way to medical, don't forget to stop and save every time you can. Make extra saves, because there's definitely some sections of this, because it's so action heavy, you might want to go back, you might have missed something. And also, don't forget to upgrade. I don't think we've talked too much about upgrade, but we'll do that at the end of the episode.
Yes, you want to upgrade stuff. By this time, you should have a pretty... Well, you're going to get... In the next 2 or 3 chapters, you're going to finish getting the last of your weapons. You should have a pretty good idea after this, like, what you want to play with. and what your playstyle is going to be. I rocked the force gun, the contact beam, and the plasma cutter. That was what I did. Sometimes I would switch one out for the pulse rifle because grenading shit is very cathartic. But mostly, I just stuck with those three.
I love the pulse rifle personally, especially for those 0G sections when you're pretty far away. For something, I don't know, having something very accurate, and also the fact that you basically have a built-in grenade launcher is pretty sweet. But I like that the cutter. I really like the Ripper and the flamethrower. So that's usually what I stick with as long as I can. But if there's a upcoming boss battle or something, I'll swap something out for one of Brandon's favorites.
Yeah, you just really can't beat the contact beam. It's a little slow at the start, but once it goes, it just kills everything.
So you get a garbled message, one of many garbled messages, which I don't ever trust the garbled messages, but it's Daniel saying that Nicole has been traced to the chemical lab.
Yeah, so you're trying to get to the chemical lab. That's why you're going through this area. So the minute you enter the little medical hub, everything kind of shuts down, and this eerie voice starts talking to you. And this guy is very cryptic. You can tell everyone on this ship is kind of high off the marker at this point. They've gone bonkers. And he's talking about, typical cryptic villain bullshit. He's like, you want to stop something that can't be stopped. Well, I'll deal with you later.
Yeah, says the obvious villain.
One thing I think is really neat about his voice too, it's probably not the same voice, but he sounds a little like Doctor Strange, and he gives off Doctor Strange voice, or not Doctor Strange, but what is the doctor from fucking Batman, the crazy doctor?
Like Scarecrow?
Not Scarecrow, the one who in Arkham City, he's the one who he's the one that runs Arkham City. He's the psychiatrist. He's gone a little crazy. And he has this huge social experiment in Arkham City that's designed to get Batman and torture him. Hugo Strange.
That's better than anything I've got.
I believe. But he sounds a little like him. DC fans out there, please don't come at me.
It's a different game. We've been really focused on this one game.
My brain can only handle so much knowledge at once.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of games that have come out, at least for free on Games Pass recently, which we both fuck with, so there's been distractions.
Yeah. And so you make your way through chemical. You're essentially just fuck it, I'm going to go anyways. And Daniels, I think, helps you open the door. But you don't wait on him, and you're like, I'm going to go find this beacon. So you go to the chem lab, and you see what is very obviously a recording of Nicole. And you just kind of walk into it, and then you get, stopped. And the voice... Go ahead.
We might have to cut this part, but are you talking about when you get hit with stasis?
Yes.
Oh, you get hit with stasis. You get a taste of your own medicine. And God, is it terrifying, because you are completely helpless, and your stasis doesn't last as long as this stasis gun does.
And it lasts exactly long enough for him to unleash one of the experiments. So, what did you think about the Immortal Hunter?
So at the end of this bit of dialogue, you see something stirring behind you as the camera pans back around to your normal over-the-shoulder position, and it is growling. And much like I always say, there's always something behind you. Now it is just, completely in your face at this point. They're just laughing at you for having this monster behind you. And yeah, you're stuck in this tiny little room with this thing that once you dismember it like regular necromorphs, it just comes right back. And I mean, it actually regenerates really fast too, which I think definitely adds to the horror element and that sense of urgency trying to get away from it.
So what did you think about this section? How did you feel playing through this?
Well, that was probably one of the first times. I might be wrong, but I think it's one of the first times in the game where convergence is first mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've played any Dead Space before, you know about convergence.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, poor little Isaac has no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then, there's also another bit that in this playthrough I noticed. Nicole says, "Make us whole,"
Mm-hmm.
and that's
she repeats that phrase a lot.
Yeah, she gets in on that. They need to be reunited. They need to be made whole, and that again comes back to convergence. And if you don't know, you'll find out. And if you do know, then you already know why I would be kind of focused on this. But it's a kind of a chase scene, trying to get away from that thing.
I'm gonna be honest. This is one of my least favorite sections in the game. I hated the fucking Immortal Hunter. Even so, a little thing about my playthrough right now, because I went back to my PC save. I've already beaten the game, so I have everything other than the flamethrower upgraded. So I have my plasma cutter upgraded, so now I can punch things and stun lock them to the ground, which is how I deal with the Immortal Hunter. But it doesn't make it any less stressful, because not only do you have to fight the Immortal Hunter, but now there's poison being released in while you're trying to run from it. You have to deal with poison, you have to deal with running from it, you have to deal with stupid festering monsters that are jumping out at you while you're trying not to die.
Yeah, it's not just like there's one enemy you're trying to get away from. No, there's necromorphs everywhere, and they're slowing you down. And if you're quick, and I guess you could probably play it 100 times and speedrun this section without losing too much ammo. But with the hunter, stasis was huge, and the kinetic glove also. So I try to use that as much as I could.
So here's a little thing I never picked up on until my third playthrough. So when you initially first walk into the little hub area in the med bay, and there's a certain distance you walk before you trigger Dr. Mercer, and he starts talking to you and the doors lock. But if you don't walk that way, you can take the back entrance, which you're going to go through anyways, but it's essentially I think not the autopsy area, not the morgue, but it's the area where you first find Nicole's recording, and it starts you on her find the survivors, what happened to Nicole side quest in that area. So when the hunter is chasing you, you have to go back through that area, and upon dealing with the Immortal Hunter and all the enemies that bum rush you in that room, you have to take the battery back out and replace it back into the door. However, if you don't trigger the cutscene and you just go straight to that room, you can put the battery in the door and it's already ready for you. So you can just book it and not worry about anything. Little pro tip, something to remember.
Pro tip. Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
I'm here to figure out the shit so you don't have to.
I do want to point out there is one fun little quip. So I was rushing through this, and I would try to be as detail oriented as I could. This playthrough for me, this section, I had to get done very quickly. I had almost no free time.
Same.
Since the first recording, and there is a joke. The doctor that's talking to you. Because you can't talk because you're in stasis, and I don't know if it's the same way in the original. I would assume maybe, but there is a line that he says before he leaves you to get jumped by this hunter monster, and he says, "You're not the talkative type, are you?"
Oh yeah, they kept that in, which is hilarious because in the first game he doesn't say shit. He just he stays silent through the whole game,
completely silent, and that's something that changed. And a lot of people think that it was definitely a change for the better. I did not super deep research, but as much as I could, and forums and Redditors and a lot of the writers on Kotaku and everything else tend to agree that the Dead Space remake is an improvement on the original, and the changes that were made, bringing back Isaac's voice actor and giving him lines, expanding on the backstory, giving him more motivation to get off the ship. More about the relationship he had with Nicole. It just makes it better. It's not just him trying to fetch quests, because there's a lot of fetch quests.
Yes.
We were talking about this earlier.
Have you been doing any of the side quests?
Not this time, but I kept my old saves so I can go back through and do the side missions.
You'll want to, because in your second playthrough, it'll help out a lot more. But, like, at the end, so essentially when you're running from him, so you go through a bunch of sections where the immortal hunter will, like, jump in and, like, bum rush you, and you got to do some running again, and then you got the gas stage where a voice from a Miss Elizabeth Cross pops in and is like, hey, there's a lot of gas. Or no, she doesn't come in yet. When you get to Mercer's office, it's either a Mercer's office or it's in another place, but this dead body, or not dead body, but this person on a table wheezes out that the area has been infected with poison from hydroponics, and so you need to do a thing with an enzyme to get the poison out. So now you have to run all the way back to the medbay area to hit the thing to cleanse the air. And then you find out that you need to make the enzyme, you have to have like liquid nitrogen.
Yeah. So you have to go back to cryo.
Yeah.
Which this isn't the first time that you've had to go there, because
we've been around the area.
Yeah, you had to go there, and that's when the flying creature turns the captain?
Yeah, because on the way to the morgue. It's on the way to the morgue, but you don't go.
Yep. I do want to point out, going back to the first episode, something else. When that creature transforms on top of you and turns the dead body into a necromorph, in the original version of Dead Space, because I've been doing a lot of comparisons, in the original Dead Space, it actually happens behind a glass wall, and then the creature jumps out the wall at you. So, again, one of those little changes they made. So that was the same sequence, but done in a completely different way. And with the time and the new technology, it's so much better to be able to have that crazy, literally in your face experience.
Yeah, I think they made that change for the best too. Like, such a good scene. It's very reminiscent of like Dead Space 2, when the game starts and this dude's trying to break you out of a cell, and then he gets hit in the head by what are they called? The little bat creatures that turn them.
Oh.
You told me in a message, and I can't remember what it is.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah, we'll come back to it. But changes him like literally in real time into it. I'm glad that they took that and put it into this game too.
Oh, it's just called an infector.
Yeah, the infectors.
Duh.
Because they infect things.
They infect things, and they fly around. They're like creepy little pterodactyls.
Yeah, if you get a chance, you can... Oh, so Mercer actually in his office has a dissected infector. And it's creepy as hell. It's essentially just the body of a torso of a person with like its skin over it and shit. And he has it like open so you can see like the organs and shit. But
oh yeah, so you're going through this sequence. This is not the first time that you've had to deal with this. I think I talked about this before, about the oppressive atmosphere. So now it's not just a dark, foggy area. There's this big, green, obviously toxic cloud that you're stuck in, and it makes it really hard to see enemies and to get around.
You really just want to run. You don't want to fight anything you just want to book it as hard and as fast as you can. And you better believe that there's one of those little bloated fucks that like shoot the little things at you.
Yep.
There's one of those. And every fucking time, I do not have time to switch to my force gun, and I just have to stomp them off of me. I literally, not even minutes, literal seconds before I ran out of oxygen and died, and I made it to an oxygen thing. I was so close to dying, and I was going to be mad if I had to go back through that section again.
Oh yeah, because you're definitely you have to watch your O2 while you're doing this also, and thankfully those stations are fairly easy to see in the distance. But But yeah, it's still just, this is definitely one of those classic Dead Space things. And again, this is going back to this being a very action heavy sequence, and we're honestly still just scratching the surface of that. Pretty soon after, we do meet Mercer, and we get some exposition on Convergence.
In the cryo chamber. He wants to lecture you some more.
And then there's also, I can't remember where it is, but there's a log where I think someone's talking about him, and they refer to what he's doing as premeditated malpractice. And then I love that line. That line always stuck out for me. Pretty soon afterwards, we kind of transition, and you get in touch with Elizabeth Cross.
Yes, but there's one thing in the cryo chamber, though. You have to fight the Immortal Hunter again. He unleashes it on you.
Oh, yeah.
You have to freeze him inside the chamber and then run around and start the thing and freeze him in the cryo chamber and send him off. It took me forever to figure out what to fucking do the first time I played this section, and I died so many times. It was so frustrating.
So that's this section for me kind of gave me PTSD because it reminds me of that very first section on the ship when you're boarding and everything starts to go to shit, and they drop necromorphs in the room with you, and then you have to book it. So yeah, I had the same problem. But there, I died probably 20 times before I actually figured out that I'm supposed to just run away. I don't know. But then this, I was like, okay, run. And I went through that area for the first time. I was like, oh, not literally, but big red button. I need to press the big red button. So, I feel like this one for me gave me a little bit more direction. But what do they say in the game? Yeah, you spaced the damn thing.
Yeah. So yeah, you did that. Except by space, we sent him into a bunch of frozen chambers to stay forever and ever and ever.
Yeah, just frozen.
So after that, you realize that the whole ship is going to get infected by these poison gases. So you have to go take care of whatever's going on in hydroponics. So here's the thing. Up to this point, you have heard voices and people either talk about or mention certain key figures that are coming up now. Mercer, Kine. You hear a little more about Captain Matthias going forward. He was kind of a nut job.
Yep.
Nicole and Temple. And Temple brings up needing to go find Elizabeth. So you go into hydroponics, and the first thing you're greeted with is this hologram of this lady walking forward, and it's Elizabeth. You find out as you play through this chapter that Temple and Elizabeth were in a relationship together. And that'll play out later on. You'll find in the last episode, the last 4 chapters, that'll play out more. Yeah, you find Elizabeth Cross. You go into the hub area and you try to go to food storage, and you get a video call from Elizabeth, and she's like, you can't go in there. Everything's shit. The poison is bad. And you're like, but I need to make this enzyme. I have this enzyme. And she's like, well, if you go, so whatever's in food storage has infected everyone in a weird way that's turned them into what's creating the poison clouds. And so she's like, you have to go find all of my infected, another thing, you have to go find all of her infected friends and inject this enzyme into them to kill the poison. And if you can get all of them, you'll weaken whatever is in food storage.
Well, this is also one of the first mentions of what the crew has lovingly termed the Leviathan. So, hydroponics in the Ishimura, not just growing food, but that's also how they get a fresh supply of oxygen on their missions, because they're out there for years, just floating around in space. And it's basically the lungs of the ship. And of course, Issaic has to fix it, because he literally just always fixes things.
He is the red shirt.
Yeah, he's the engineer, he's the red shirt. He wasn't supposed to make it for very long. So yeah, you get the mention of the Leviathan. So you have to go, we're injecting Weezers. I was actually surprised that I don't know if I was more surprised that there were so many places that you had to go to do that, or if
I forget that there were 8 Weezers you have to inject, and several of them on all 3 floors. And you have another brute fight too on top of this.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, you have to fight the Hulk again.
Yeah.
That happens pretty much right after you talk about this with Elizabeth Cross. Giant Hulk. Again, I am gonna recommend Stasis. And if you can find anything in the environment to throw at it, use the kinesis too. Because especially if you're playing on a harder difficulty, you really need to watch your ammunition. And this chunk of the story, this kind of like midsection of the story, again, super action heavy. You are really going to need as much as you can get for certain sections, like this and other sections that are coming up. Because for the most part, running through all these hallways, there's just necromorphs everywhere until you get to your. Every so often, you find a little loot room and audio log and some exposition on the story, and those are like your peaceful moments.
Yeah, and those peaceful moments do not last. I believe you also get the force gun in hydroponics, which is essentially just a space shotgun that creates air blasts. One of the cool things about the force gun is if you shoot someone, or you shoot a necromorph with the force gun, you will watch all of its skin blast off its body. You hit it again, and you can watch all the muscles tear off of its body. It's very detailed in those graphics. It's a very disgusting weapon to use.
So that was something that was added to the remake of the game, and again, why the majority of people think it was an improvement. So this is lovingly called the peeling system by the developers.
Mm-hmm.
And again, yeah. So if you whack one of them, you start taking off layers. Mm-hmm. And necromorphs are like onions; they got layers.
They've got layers. You go through and you have to inject this enzyme into like 8 different Weezers and this scene. So I just plowed straight through it because it gets kind of boring killing all these Weezers. But you have to get all 8 of them before you can go fight the Leviathan. But once you get the Weezers, you then go to food storage. What did you think about the fight with the Leviathan? How did you feel about it?
I actually thought it was really good. I thought it was nice. I thought it was actually very challenging. Mm-hmm. I do want to go back for just 1 second and point out that there is an audio log you get from Elizabeth Cross saying that she knows how to kill it.
Oh, yeah.
And also in that same audio log, I believe she talks about how the people who were infected with that toxic gas died. And she says that she can't stop hearing the sound of their lungs popping out of their chests like flowers. So a little dark poetry for you. But yeah, so I did take some special notes on this. This is for you, Brandon. Mm-hmm. Before you go into food storage, so Isaac is just over it. He is like, I'm going to kill this damn thing. You don't know what I've been doing this entire time.
Yeah. And we got to get rid of it.
Elizabeth is like, that thing weighs 10 kilotons.
Yeah.
And for anybody who wants to know, that is a ridiculous number of pounds. I'm not going to bore you with that. It is 11,023.113 tons, which is equivalent to 4 blue whale tongues, 2 elephants, or 3 hippos, or 4 rhinos, 4 pickup trucks, or 6 giraffes. So
you are fighting 6 giraffes.
I honestly, compared to the Leviathan, I would much rather fight 6 giraffes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this thing is in this huge cylinder area. And this is when the zero gravity movement system in the remake comes into effect, essentially. So in the original, I pointed out before, this fight plays out much differently. Mm-hmm. So obviously the visual improvements are one thing, but in the original, all Isaac could do was use his mag boots to run around, or so clunk around, quite literally. And if you wanted to traverse space, you could jump and aim for something to latch onto it and then keep moving, but his movement speed through space is not very fast. Mm-hmm. So, you lose a lot of momentum, and if you're trying to dodge, you're probably going to get hit. So again, this fight I feel like is more forgiving in the remake, obviously depending on which difficulty you're on. But there are floating canisters for you to throw at it. If you're good with the kinetic glove, when it's launching these things at you, you can catch them and actually launch them back. There's 3 giant tentacles coming out. And it's obviously the same thing as the corridor tentacles that you're so in love with by this point. I mean, I thought it was good. I really thought if you get into a good rhythm, it can be fun. I mean, obviously we're playing the game for a reason. So yeah, I actually thought it was fairly enjoyable.
Something about the corridor tentacles as well, because you brought up before that if you look really closely at them, they are hands and arms kind of like weaved in together. So you get attacked by another one in hydroponics.
Oh, yeah. I was going to talk about this too.
If you look into the hand part that grabs you, there's a fucking screaming face just looking at you with this like permanent scream look. It's really fucking creepy.
Yeah, on the system I play on, it's a big collection of human heads. The inside of this tentacle, and it's completely nightmare-inducing.
Do you remember those like the YouTube videos where you're watching something and it's really quiet, and then towards the end you'll get this jump scare and it's like this face that's like
Oh yeah.
It reminds me of that face just permanently in that pose inside those tentacles. It's creepy.
Yeah, it's very creepy, and it's honestly just seeing that is probably worse than the actual tentacle sequence itself, because you know what to do at that point. It's not your first rodeo with that thing. So yeah, you fight this thing, and
you space its ass.
You space it, and actually, this is another really good sequence that I like. Is because the door to space is open, so this thing's ass is just facing the universe at this point, and so once you hurt it enough, it flies out, and so. As the blast doors close, and I really love this attention to detail, Issaic uses his jets to just he totally Iron Mans it. He just stays completely stationary, and then it closes, and then bam, normality is restored.
So after the Leviathan, Elizabeth is like, you should go to mining and see if survivors are in mining. That's where Temple was, and that's what Temple was doing. And she doesn't know if Temple made it out alive or not. So you go to mining.
And this is also when you get another cross conversation with Hammond. He is in hiding. He's hiding, and Issaic mentions, he's like, yeah, these things are everywhere. And Hammond tells you, oh no, I'm hiding from the unitologists.
They've gone bonkers, and they are killing each other. So here's the thing about this sequence too. Because if you think about the time in which Dead Space 1 and 2 came out, that was kind of the edgy horror thing, was to do bodily harm and be smiling while it happens. I just cut my wrist and I have this creepy smile on my face. Isn't this edgy? And there was a little bit when he was they're fucking smiling while they're stabbing each other. And I'm that is some early 2000s edgelord bullshit.
Well, again, that goes back to Event Horizon, which obviously influenced this, and so you get a lot of bodily mutilation.
So mining really with the comparisons to specifically Event Horizon and their ship, because the Event Horizon, when you go into it, looks like a very stripped down ship. You see a lot of that in mining specifically. Lots of jagged edges, little things that look like blades coming out of the walls.
Oh yeah, I do want to point out really quick on this. So when you get to mining, there is a message written on the wall in either blood or very bright red paint, and it says, there's traps or something along those lines.
Yeah, for the humans.
So they the miners, they've actually used traps to keep the necromorphs out. And as you turn the hallway, you see the traps, and a necromorph runs at you. It's obviously scripted. It gets blown up to bits by this trap, so it's dangerous. So there's boxes that you get to kinesis to move through here. I just want to say I had a little mistake while I was doing that, and instead of grabbing one of the boxes, the glove locked onto one of the bodies. There's a bunch of wrapped dead bodies, and so I used the dead crew member's body in kinesis to block the lasers and walk through, kind of shuffling.
Hey, it's space. No one can hear you do terrible things like that.
Well, it's pixels, right?
So you get the line gun, which is a bigger version of the plasma cutter, which is cool. It's not my favorite weapon to use, honestly. Like, I mean, if you want to cut a bunch of enemies at once, it's good. After I got the contact beam, it just really wasn't something I like to use. But if you power it up, you can set those same traps with it, and they're stupid powerful, and they just cut everything down to pieces when they run through it.
Especially if you're in one of the smaller rooms where you are just supposed to run kind of in circles for a couple minutes, until the game will trigger an escape. It does help.
Do you remember? Because I have been busy this week, and so I was just powering through this game and taking what notes I could. But I forget. Do you remember why the SOS beacon was brought up? Was that something Elizabeth Cross said, or did Daniel say that she found one there? Because it's key to getting off the ship. Is we want to find this SOS beacon and send it off.
I think, if I remember correctly, this is something that goes back to Jacob and Kine, and then someone who will bring up a lot.
Oh, yeah.
That would be Dallas.
Yes.
When you go looking for him and his rig further down.
So you have to get the SOS beacon, and mining brings one of my I forgot how much I love this section, but one of the best sections, which is you can't send the SOS beacon off, it's kind of fucked up. So you have to go out. So the idea is you have to go to one of the giant rock pieces that you've harvested from Aegis 7, and you have to go set the beacon on it, destroy the tethers holding it, and release the payload out. And that's how you're going to get the SOS beacon. So you have to go fly around this giant area shooting these tethers, and then you have to go outside the ship and shoot the tethers around this giant-ass asteroid. It's a really neat set piece. It's fucking huge, too.
It's one of those scenes that definitely gives you a good idea of the scale of everything, for sure.
Before that, you have to go find Dallas.
Yeah, this is a great section. And then there's a lot more exposition as far as some of the characters go. You get logs from Cross or Elizabeth, and then you also get logs from Jacob. They were kind of a thing.
Yes.
And they leave kind of their last messages for each other just in case they die. You find out fairly early on in this section that Jacob went in. He actually went in to save Dr. Mercer, which I guess Jacob didn't really know that he was the obvious villain.
Turns out the person with the eerie, creepy-ass voice is a bad guy. Shocker.
You find a really good audio log between Kine and Dallas. They spoke about the marker. They knew, they had kind of an idea of what was going on. And again, right after you find out that Jacob was going to sacrifice himself to save Mercer, Dallas knew that Mercer was fucked up in the head.
And you find one of the more messed up kind of audio logs from Dallas.
Yeah, and then right before that, you also find out that Kine was actually trying to find the marker because he thought that it would fix whatever was going on. So he had some kind of a plan. They knew the captain was bonkers. They knew that Mercer was trying to kill everybody. So coming up to Dallas, his final log, when you find this right after you find his rig so that you can progress. He sealed himself and the necromorphs in, and one of the biggest things that he says is, if I don't have any limbs, I can't kill anyone when I'm infected. So he did just that. He cut off 3 of his limbs so that he couldn't turn into a slashing necromorph that would kill anybody that was innocent.
You hear it too. He'll scream in pain, and you hear the plasma cutter go off as he's cutting himself.
At least he had something to do it quick and easy, and not like a butter knife.
Yeah.
Little throwback to the inspiration for Dead Space, or one of the inspirations. He's probably named after Arthur Dallas, because in Dead Space he's A. Dallas. Arthur Dallas in the original Alien, he got infected by a facehugger and took the easy way out, rather than having to suffer through the chest bursting.
Who also killed himself because he did not want to turn into a monster or birth a monster that will kill everyone else.
Yep, and then shortly after this, you get a message from Hammond, and he kind of turns his selfie cam around, and you see that the unitologists have the marker, and they're loving it. They're just having a good old time with that thing. And then shortly after that, I'm sure Brandon has a lot more to say about it, but you actually see Nicole in the flesh.
Yes. So a few things about Nicole. First, in mining, you can find these 4 storage rooms, and if you go to the storage room and you have to release power to them individually. You can find a recording of Nicole, and it's a recording that she saved that talks about when she first started on the Ishimura, and she's like, "Oh, the ship is so pretty. Thank you, Isaac, for pushing me to get on this ship. I wasn't sure, and I didn't really want to do it, but you talked me into it, and I'm very thankful that you did because it's an amazing ship." It's very interesting that he finds this particular audio log because really she wouldn't be on there if it wasn't for Isaac pushing her to do it. In mining, you reach a point where you find Elizabeth. So this is an interesting section. So you take this gondola through this part. It's really become very infected with the tumor shit. Like, you got a lot of like fleshy, dead stuff all over this area. And you make it to the end because you have to get to this workshop. And you see Nicole appears, and she's like, "Isaac, you made it." So she also sounds very fucking weird too. Like, she's like, "I'll open the thing. You have to, like, you can do this. You can save us." And she says again, she's like, "You have to make us whole again." And so you have to keep her alive while she's opening this workshop door, and you kill a bunch of necromorphs, and then she stops and she says the weirdest fucking thing. She's like, I've never seen you in action before with that. You use it with such surgical precision. And it's a little kind of sexy, and it's a little weird. So when you do this section, so it's interesting, she leaves, she's like, "Isaac, you have to do this. You have to make us whole again."
Yeah, she says you have to put things back the way they were. You have to make us whole again.
So here's the thing. You have an option. You can either turn off power to the gondola, or you can turn off gravity and float through this section, which you want to turn off gravity to float through this section because you have to go to this other door. Or, well, you know what? You can take the gondola back, I guess. But so if you fly over to where Nicole is, there's a little message that you can, like an audio log, you can retrieve. And when you retrieve that audio log, it's the same question, or it's the same dialogue you just had with Nicole, but it's not Nicole you're talking to, it's Elizabeth Cross.
Oh yeah, I do want to add in a little detail from my personal experience of this. There is a corpse with an exposed skull laying next to where you turn the gravity off. And when I cut the gravity, the corpse starts to float. And so in the bottom corner of my screen, there's just this skeleton just starts creeping up, and it actually scared me.
Oh yeah. It's pretty, this game, again, like the tense levels are really high, and it gets really creepy.
You're just on point. I swear, if somebody knocked on my front door while I was playing this, I would probably jump a mile out of my seat and freak out.
At this point, too, you want to put a pin in that conversation between you and Nicole, and the idea that, like, if you go retrieve that message, and you realize you're talking to Elizabeth Cross. Want to put a pin in that. We'll revisit that in the next episode.
All right, so after you get through this section, you plant the beacon, and that's when you do the thing with the tethers, the gravity tethers. Mm-hmm. And so I tried to do a little bit of background search on the gravity tethers. There's actually nothing in the canon that explains specifically how they work.
Yeah.
Or specifically what they are, other than they're giant generators. Mm-hmm. They're basically the tank version of your kinesis glove. So, basically just a huge kinesis thing. And then in something that we will talk about later, Dead Space Extraction, last episode, spoilers, I assume, it says that if they're damaged and not fixed, that they will generate a mini black hole. And so...
Interesting.
Pretty dangerous technology to have on a priceless flagship mining vessel full of, I assume, thousands of souls. But, whatever.
I feel like this repeats a thing that a lot of science fiction does, where the price of going into space and operating giant things often is utilizing a science that creates very dangerous things.
Looking at you, Waylon Yutani. Oh yeah, so right now, and then the Bye-Bye Planet chunk. Hello, Hunter.
Oh, yes. So, when you send off the SOS beacon, you encounter the Immortal Hunter, and you're trapped in this room. Also, while you have to survive this Immortal Hunter, you have necromorphs popping in through the ceiling at you. It's stressful. This is another section that took me a while to figure out what to do, because Daniels is communicating with you. She's like, oh, you have to manually release the emergency door thing because an iron door has come down and blocked it. You can't get out. So there's a fucking magnetic bar that you have to kinesis down, which I couldn't figure out because I was too busy running from the Immortal Hunter to see it.
Yeah, this one stumps a lot of people. I was looking at a couple of different playthroughs of the original and the remake to see how other people handle this, and also to see the differences. They're pretty much identical, but I know a couple, especially one of the playthroughs, this guy probably did 15 laps around the room before he actually realized he was supposed to kinesis this thing, and I kind of felt bad.
Yeah. So you open the door and you escape the Immortal Hunter again. You're running from it. So this leads us. So you get it out, and let's see. You send out the SOS beacon, and you get a message back. There is a military ship, the USS Valor, has picked up your SOS beacon, and you're like, oh, we need to communicate with it. And at this point, Daniels is also kind of going crazy, and he's like, what is a military ship doing out here? And Daniels is like, who fucking cares? Let's get the fuck off this ship.
Oh yeah, a little detail we skipped earlier that's coming back right now. So Daniels mentioned seeing something in the cameras that looked familiar. And she was like, I could have sworn it was my little brother. And so that's coming back to us again.
Yeah, she knows that she's being affected by the marker, and she wants... And that's the thing, too, is she already... You kind of get the sense that she already kind of, by how she's communicating, she kind of knows what the marker does. But why would Daniels know what the marker does?
Yeah, out of everybody that's... dealing with all this stuff, objectively, Issaic is handling it pretty well. But, overall, he's losing his mind, and he's having to kill all these things. Hammond is crawling around in the vents to try and hide from the necromorphs and the unitologists, and he's freaking out. Daniels is kind of just comfortably in this office the whole time. She's not having a great time, but she probably got set some snacks in there, too.
We'll put another pin in the thing with Daniels, because we'll get more in that in the last 4 chapters.
Yes. Okay, so coming back to the Valor, side note, I love the military design because you really just get to see like the helmet and a little bit of the shoulders and up, but their helmet design, it just looks really badass.
Well, so you have to go to comms array to get in touch with because comms are down. You're like, shit, comms are down. So and, we want to make contact with this ship, so we got to go to comms array and fix the comms.
So now we are leaving chapter 7, which was called Into the Void. Perfect. And now we're in chapter 8, which is called Search.
Yes. So we go into. So here's the thing. So you're backtracking back through the atrium, the big area of the atrium where the captain's nest is, and you're going back through the area with the break room. This is a point where like you go back through the area with the break room, and you notice things are very different. The ship is more covered with these tumor growths. And
yes.
So
something is definitely growing. And then you get back on the tram. You get told to go to the bridge.
Yep. You go through the break room. You go through the growth area.
Yeah. So then you get back on the tram, and this is the kind of the first time that this happens, and this is very unsettling. I feel like.
Oh yeah.
Story. So you're on the tram. The lights start flickering. Everything starts shaking and shuddering. And then the tram stops. The lights go out, and they just have this red glow from a few sections of the tram. And there's something skittering around outside, just screeching. It just sounds absolutely nightmare-inducing. And I mean, at this point, your first playthrough, you're like, oh, things are gonna bust in here. I'm gonna go out and have to fight a bunch of stuff. But after a few seconds, normality resumes and you're on your way. But it's just one of those things that
it's really stressful.
It just really sticks with you. You're not having a good time on top of not having a good time with this.
So comms array brings up a couple of key story points. So when you go in, you have these two doorways you can go into. One is First Officer Bailey. So you can go in there and you can listen to his audio log. And he talks about how they weren't even supposed to be in Aegis 7 to begin with. They're like...
No, apparently it's illegal for them to have mined this planet entirely. And apparently many crew members actually knew that they weren't supposed to be doing it.
And they just kept their mouth shut about it.
Because it seemed like, okay, whatever, we'll just make some money. He knew about it, and then basically in this audio log, which is kind of one of the better ones as far at this point, that actually will explain more. So he is like, all right, the captain's bonkers, and it's time for me to tell somebody about this. But in the audio log, it cuts off with him at the end saying he sends out a mayday, and he goes, oh, the comms are shut off. He shut them off, and he said specifically he, so probably the captain.
So if you go into the other room, and it's the room that's the entrance into the comms array, there's a security level 3 door, and if you go into that door, you can play an audio log by Captain Matthias, who's essentially sending an audio relay out to another unitologist on a different planet area. And he's essentially saying that, like, things are moving as they should. We have the marker. We're going to send it back. And then he's like, then CEC, he also acknowledges it's he's like, can continue their illegal operation on Aegis 7. So yeah, again, Aegis 7 is off limits. No one is supposed to be on this planet. Kind of crazy how this planet is off limits, right?
Yeah, it's so weird. Then you enter the big comms array area, the zero gravity section. You kind of reroute the.
It's a mini game where you have to
it's a zero
plug and pull shit.
Yeah, I don't know. I love the zero G in this.
Yeah,
and it was specifically designed from the ground up for the remake. So I think they did a really good job. I mean, especially considering that EA hasn't been doing anything other than superhero and Battlefield recently. So I think that this was a good departure for their creative team.
So you do the things and you go to get the message, and it's the Valor, and they're like, We we're sending this on loop. We picked up your or no.
No, they picked up escape pod 47, if I remember correctly.
And Daniel's like, escape pod, and they're like, oh no. And so they try to hail it, and they can't hail the ship. And so they're freaking out, like, shit, we gotta hail the ship. We gotta tell them, don't open that pod. But the antenna isn't raising. Guess who's returned?
Chen!
Yes, but also guess who returned?
Oh yeah, it turns out you can't open the comms array and send it into its kind of open transmitting position because there's a large mass blocking the doors.
Maybe someone would call it a Leviathan.
It's probably not quite 10 kilotons, but you took a little bit off of it.
Yeah, so it's back again, and so you have to fight it again, and this time...
Well, you have to go fix more stuff, which includes fighting it.
Yeah. So fighting the Leviathan, this time, you have 3 ADS cannons that you can use, and you have to shoot these, like, hardened areas on it, and then blow those up, and when you blow those up, it'll destroy the ADS cannons, and then from that point, you just gotta, like, float around. It's spitting these explosive things at you that if you touch will explode you.
It has a lot. Yeah, there's I know also
tentacles.
Traversing from this is again obviously 0G, but traversing from one of the cannons to the other. There are these like they almost are like the underwater landmines, you know, but instead of spikes they have little tentacle kind of things. Yeah, this is it's a fairly straightforward thing. You know, it's just a new take on fighting the same monster. And I don't know, I think it's fun. This one also differs a lot more in the original than the first Leviathan fight. Mm-hmm. So this one in the original, you do run to the ADS cannons, but you're actually in the ship behind glass while you're shooting these cannons.
Really?
Yeah. So this one, they actually just put you out into space and show off their flashy zero gravity system.
You have to like keep an eye on your oxygen too, because the oxygen points are at the far end of the areas, so you have to go back and forth to them to refill.
Yeah, there's a lot to keep your eye on. There's the tentacles, there's the things that it's shooting at you, those little like landmine things that are scattered about. But yeah, it's this one. I feel like this one honestly, if you play it right, it's even easier than the first one. It's still really fun too. So
you kill it for real this time. You actually space it the fuck out, and you go back to the comms array now that you can get the antenna down, and you hail the ship, and mass destruction. Everyone is dead, of course, because you couldn't get to them in time, and they opened it. And guess who you get to see prancing around? Just happy as fucking ever.
Couldn't be an old crewmate, could it?
Yeah, it wouldn't be Chen, just dicing people. He has such a like goober look on his face as a necromorph, as he's just like very obvious, like walking in front of the camera, like flinging his fucking blades around.
And so that would be the beginning of chapter 9, Dead on Arrival.
Yes, the USS Valor runs right into you, and you now have to go into that ship.
I do want to bring up, since we're kind of at the end of not the segment, but what we're going to talk about chapter wise. But on your way to fight the Leviathan for the second time, you do round a corner in a very grungy, dark hallway, and this tall, lanky figure steps out around the corner. And then that is your introduction to a new type of necromorph called the Divider. And so this guy you fight the same way you do other necromorphs, but once you think you killed it, it just turns into a bunch of smaller...
Oh, yeah, the little segments.
Things. Yeah, so that's a fun one. And then this is obviously... they're introducing it classic, the way you would introduce any new enemy, and then you're going to start seeing it more often.
Also, I think it's in chapter 5... Yeah, Lethal Devotion introduces another enemy. That's my least favorite. So it's like this body that's fleshed into the wall, and its chest is opened up, and it has all these giant tentacles that come out, and it shoots tentacles at you that lodge themselves under the ground and shoot things like acid at you while you're fighting. And you have to cut all of his tentacles off within a certain amount of time, 2 times. And if you don't get them all in a certain amount of time, he'll just regrow them endlessly. He sucks.
Let's talk about the necromorphs for a second. So obviously everything's been redesigned, they're reskinned, and then they're reskinned for you to deskin them.
Yeah, reskin for deskin.
I do want to say that I know that it's supposed to be, it's almost like a predator jaw kind of situation on jumpers, the ones that don't really have legs, that just have the big arms that jump on you, which I mean, also those things in
the hunters,
the jumpers, and if you have any of the bloaters, that is a very bad combination. You have to really pick your battles with those. And that's again, when stasis will definitely come in handy. I don't know, I'm a big fan of stasis personally. You can just stasis something and then just unload your flamethrower on it. It's a good day. But those things, they have, I can't unsee it. They have walrus teeth. They have big old tusks that come out. And again, if you look up a jumper, it's way more detailed than that, but I just can't unsee the walrus tusk thing. Especially since they just flop around on the floor, kind of like a walrus does. I think we talked about this, your basic necromorph, in the remake, super, super detailed. You can see parts of their clothes and their rig that have been kind of taken over by the infection.
Like the mining ones are really thick with their big, thick mining suits.
That's more attention to detail. And I also, we didn't really get into it, but the Weezers. That design. And also the fact that you just stab them right in the forehead.
Yeah, they just die.
They're like, ugh. This is again coming after talking about conversion, and Cross points out that they are spewing this toxic gas, but they are also sort of working like lungs for the Leviathan.
So the thing that they bring up in these 4 chapters too, that they talk about, is that the marker. So what the marker does is it sends off a frequency that messes with your internal DNA structure and starts changing you. And it essentially makes you want to kill yourself so that the full change will start happening. And I think it was actually in the first 4 chapters, they talk about how you have it's after the infector gets introduced, that you have ones that make others and then ones that kill you fast enough so the infector can turn you into a necromorph. Because if you come in contact with the marker, it's already changing your DNA structure, so to prepare you for it.
Yeah, it doesn't need your consciousness. It just needs your
body.
Yeah, your cellular structure. A Lego, basically, to the marker.
Yes.
I had some other notes about the remake I want to go through since we're closing things. Something that I really appreciated about this, especially this section, I don't know why it really sunk in with me this time, but the fact that there are absolutely no loading zones. You don't open a door, blackout screen, little loading bar, little quip about
it's so continuous.
What the heck, blah blah blah. It's a seamless design, and that really, really helps with the immersion. Like, you're really this is a perfect game if you're really big on and being an immersive gamer. If you really want to turn out the lights in your house, put the headphones on, really get into it and feel like you're there, you easily can with this. Even just playing on the couch with a controller and lights on and background noise and whatever, it still pulls you in. So yeah, it's great for that. But the fact that everything is shot in one long take is just beautiful.
Yeah, you really start to feel during this part the interconnectedness of the ship, and the fact that you can go back and retrace various areas. I would not recommend doing that unless you really just want to get the side quests done, because unlike the original, necromorphs don't stay dead. You can revisit the same area that you've cleared, and more necromorphs will jump out.
Which is, kind of canonically accurate since there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Let's see. We already talked about the peeling system. Fantastic name. Oh, yeah. So I was going to talk about, we're going to go back to the upgrade system before we get into that.
Oh, yeah.
So in the original, remember the weapons? You actually just bought them with credits. That was like a big thing.
Yeah, you find them now.
And then now you kind of organically find them in the areas where someone would be using that type of tool. And so I don't know. I thought that was definitely
really immersive,
way more immersive, and then they can kind of like benchmark you on where you're at in the story and the types of enemies. And of course, like the loot drop system, if you say you pick up the flamethrower and you never used flamethrower, it's just in your storage locker, you're not going to find flamethrower ammo. The game will actually reward you with the ammunition for the guns that you use.
Yeah.
Which I think is very nice, because I would hate to get kind of like cornholed into using something that I wasn't, a fan of just because I have a bunch of the ammo for it.
It's also something that their later game, the Callisto Protocol, did not do. Turns out you couldn't slot weapons like you could in this one, and you just often would pick up a lot of ammo that you didn't fucking need. And I found I would be selling ammo like a shit ton because it just wasn't giving me what I needed.
Oh, yeah. And something that I know you're a huge fan of is the addition in the remake of the alternate fire mode.
Oh, yeah.
So that was another quality of life upgrade. And again, also, it helps with the immersion, the idea that, this thing can do this and this and this.
The Force Gun has one of my favorite alternate fire modes where you just shoot a fucking gravity ball into the ground and it drags everything into it, and it can also cause damage. It's so good.
That was really good.
You can get a bunch of them and then just contact beam the hell out of them. So good. So good.
Yeah, you can definitely combo some of these weapons and get really, really beautiful results if you know what you're doing. Let's see. So again, going back to when we were talking about the there being more backstory added with Nicole and Isaac's relationship. Something else I feel like is way more subtle. Unitology is actually more present in the remake than the original. They talk more about it, and I think it's because it is a remake after the second and the third ones, which we're not going to get into, but they definitely do a little bit more with that. And you get more backstory on Isaac. You get more of like this is like a real person. Where in the original, he's just the punching bag. He's the silent punching bag that you.
They're just like, go do this.
Yeah.
Go fix this thing. Go kill the Leviathan.
Go clunk around and get stabbed a few times.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so this has been our second episode. In 2 weeks, we'll be covering chapters 9 through 12. Yes, 9 through 12. Yep. So,
if you were sorry.
No, go ahead.
If you have listened to our first episode, thank you so much. If you're listening to this episode after the first episode, again, thank you so much. It means a lot to us. We're just starting out doing this, and we're getting a little bit more comfortable with it as the days go by.
Yeah, this has been a learning process for both of us because we both work full-time jobs while doing this. This is not our job. This is kind of a hobby that we do because we like talking about video games, and what better space than to do that on a podcast, I think, personally.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to do it anyway. So we might as well record it and let you enjoy some of what we're doing.
So tune in. We will have another episode in a couple of weeks. And this has been one of your hosts, Brandon.
And your other host, Dakota.
Signing off. We will see you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.